So then I guess that just brings us to the Workbench. All right, so Workbench today, I know we've talked about this probably a million different times in a million different segments, but one of the things I wanted to do was give this its own segment so Eddie can chop it out and make this easy for y'all to refer back to. What we're going to talk about is thread size, because that's pretty generic.
I always like it when you talk about size.
One of the things, because just quick, right off the top, one of the things we get, your basic thread sizes is 50 weight and 40 weight. That's what most people are using. And I just wanted to do a quick refresher on this because I get this question a lot. You've got really fine thread. I don't know if it's going to come through. I'm just going to show you the spools because the difference in thread is very minuscule. But you've got stuff like 100 weight thread. 100 weight thread is very fine. The higher the number of thread, the smaller it is. So 100 weight is about as thin as you can get and still work with it on your machine. You usually see it in silk or poly. It's very rare that you will ever find this in cotton because cotton is not a strong enough fiber to handle 100 weight. So 100 weight thread, we do have this. It's great for miniatures. Mom, you like 100 weight thread, right? You've used it a lot.
I like to use it when I use my embroidery machine to quilt wall hangings. It comes out beautifully because most of the wall hangings that I make are actually pieced. There are not a lot of applique ones, so I don't want heavy thread on it. And I love using my machine for quilting on, like you guys do with Becky. And when you make a wall hanging that's like 12 by 12 or 18 by 12 or whatever, it's just perfect for that because you can use your magnetic hoop and you use the Invisifil or the 100 weight thread. You can hardly even see the thread on your quilting and your wall hanging looks beautiful.
And so that's kind of what 100 weight thread is Invisifil is what this brand is called, but that really sums up what it's good for. It disappears. You can get it in a variety of colors. You usually just kind of match it to the generic background. But 100 weight is to disappear. It's thread that you don't want to see. If you're doing miniatures and you want like these really, really minuscule seam allowances, you don't have to. You can use really tiny needles with it. We'll get into needle size later. But 100 weight thread has a very specific purpose, usually for decorative stuff. Yes.
Do you use the same weight in the bobbin?
I use pre-wound bobbins of Deco Bob. So the bobbin part doesn't, it's the same thing I always use because the back of it isn't like critical to me.
What's the weight on the Deco Bob?
We're going to get into that.
Yeah, that's,
I'm just wondering.
it's
I
80.
thought when you quilted,
It's 70.
that you had to match the
Threads?
weight of your thread.
No, if I'd known I was doing this, I could have brought some of them. I do them all the time.
Yes. So Deco Bob, great segue. You guys are just working right into this, almost like I wrote a script. But Deco Bob is 80 weight. And 80 weight, you're going to find most of your pre-wound bobbins and bobbin-specific threads are going to be anywhere from 60 weight to 80 weight. So Fine's bottom line is a 60 weight, and Wonderfil's Deco Bob is an 80 weight. Let me see if you guys can see this.
I can hold that one.
So that top thread there, that's Invisifil, the bottom 100 weight. Bottom thread is Deco Bob, which is 80 weight. So it's a little bit heavier. So it's going to be a little bit stronger. One thing to keep in mind if you're using 100 weight thread as well is shorten your stitch length. It'll make the stitch the stitch will be a little bit stronger. So 100 weight, you want to shorten your stitch length. With the 80 weight is almost exclusively used for bobbin thread, is what most people market it as. You can use it for top stitching. If you don't want to use an Invisifil, you want something a little bit lighter that's going to disappear a little bit, but not quite as much as Invisifil, you can use some 80 weight. But like I said, 80 weight is usually a bobbin thread, and like I said, you will see the So Fine 60 weight is also used as a bobbin thread. So that's that thread. So like I said, as the number goes down, the thread is getting thicker. The other thing you will see, I don't have any here because we don't carry a lot of 60 weight. You can also use, the other thing that Deco Bob works good for because it's 80 weight is lettering when you're embroidering. If you're doing really tiny letters, you want a finer thread so that you get better detail. 80 weight is good for that, or a 60 weight. In fact, Floriani's micro thread, I believe, is a 60 weight. So 80 to 60 is really good for embroidery on fine lettering.
Will the 100 weight tend to break in your quilt?
I could talk about that.
I will say from a long arm standpoint, yes. That's why I won't use Invisifil for the most part anymore in long arm because it does tend to break. You can tune it, but it's not worth it. A lot of times, if somebody wants something that's Invisifil, I'm going to go to Deco Bob an 80 weight instead of 100 weight, just because it's going to finished products is fairly close. The difference in thread breaking on a long arm is night and day between 180 weight thread.
When I use it for machine quilting on my luminaire, I make sure that if the pattern has a lot of overlapping stuff on it, I slow my machine down because that really cuts back on the breaking. But if it's just a real kind of meandering thing has no detail in it, then I kind of just leave it where it's set.
Yeah.
But when if it does start to break, I just make sure I have a nice needle in it that's for embroidery, and that I slow it down a little bit. But that's my go-to. In fact, when I left here, I don't know how long ago, I made sure that I had all the colors of Invisifil for my quilting on my wall hangings that are small, because I just love how they look when I'm done with them like that.
Yes, so it will break. That is something to keep in mind. You will have to slow things down if you're using Invisifil. And if, like I said, if you're piecing with it, I usually don't run into breakage when you're piecing with it, but you do want to shorten your stitch length so that you have a little bit more strength there. All right, so those are kind of your two specialty threads that you're going to see. You're going to see on occasion. And if you're looking at Invisifil, you're looking for Invisifil. The 80 weight stuff is usually bobbin thread. So anytime you're looking at pre-wound bobbins, a lot of times you're going to tend to be in that 80 weight range. Now we're going to get to the thread that everybody uses, or most everybody.
I use Deco Bob for everything.
You can use Deco Bob for everything.
Yeah.
But the other thing you're gonna find
even when you're embroidering.
Oh no, I meant for any kind of piecing. I do not use cotton. I always use Deco Bob.
Yes.
Because I love the seams that I get from piecing with Deco Bob.
Deco Bob. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, so this brings up a very interesting point. So you can use Deco Bob for piecing as well. The difference is, and I think the reason that most people stick to 50 weight cotton, or 50 weight Aurifil is the go-to piecing thread. That's what I've got here, 50 weight Aurifil. The reason I think that Aurifil is going to outdo Deco Bob is you cannot get, if you get cotton much lighter than 50 weight, it's going to be very sketchy when it comes to a strength standpoint. You're going to get a lot of breaks. 50 weight is about is about as far as you're going to get on cotton, which is probably, I don't know anybody that makes an 80 weight cotton. And any of the 60 weights I've ever seen are at least are usually cottonized poly. They're not actual cotton. So when you get to 50 weight, that the reason that Aurifil I think sells so well is because it's one of the only 100% cotton 50 weights out there that's really nice to work with. And this is what most people use to piece with. Is people come in looking for piecing thread. We're gonna point them towards Aurifil 50 weight. And this is kind of the go-to piecing. You can embroider with it. We did talk about this a couple weeks ago about embroidering with this, but you want to change your stitch density and a few other things. 50 weight is great for piecing. I would not recommend it for all-purpose embroidery. And just to show, if Eddie wants to zoom in on this, because we'll show the other thing to keep in mind. I don't know, can you see that, Eddie? Down right there. I don't know if you can see the difference. So again, top thread is going to be 80 weight, bottom thread is 50 weight. The difference is not quite as stark as you get between 100 and 80, but you can see that the 50 is a little bit thicker. And I was just going to say something about that, and I totally lost my train of thought. But 50 weight is kind of the go-to piecing thread that a lot of people will go to because you can get it in 100% cotton, and it's some good stuff. Oh, the other thing I was going to talk about is when you do see thread, there's sometimes on the back, like this, on this you're going to see there's a 50/2. 50 weight is kind of a generic, every 50 weight is going to be about the same. But Aurifil you might find to be a little bit lighter than, say, like a Gutermann 50 weight. Reason being is it's a 2-strand versus a 3-strand. So the strands are a little bit different. That's going to be, that's a minor difference, like I said. So if you do see two 50 weight threads that they don't look to be the same width, it's probably because it's got a different strand count. They're all going to be fairly similar in weight because the weight itself is measured by the 50, but the strand count, the difference in strand count will give threads a little bit different appearance. So yes, that 50 weight is going to be your generic piecing. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to talk to today because Aurifil is awesome. I'm going to teach you all a secret. This is Aurifil 40 weight. What's the difference between these two combs?
10. One in green and
Yeah, one is orange and one is green. It's orange, red. Yeah, it's orange. Aurifil color codes their threads. So if you're looking for 50 weight, it's always going to be on an orange spool.
Yeah, but I never remember which color is what weight.
And if you're going to do a 40 weight, it's going to be green. Green means go.
What color
when you're ready to embroider on your embroidery machine, what color is the button? It's green. So it's green as embroidery thread. Again, this is just going to be the same. These are the same color. This is a a weight, just a 40 weight. 40 weight,
Still
you
totally
you can still piece with 40 weight. Difference in 40 weight versus 50 weight. You can still piece with 40 weight. A lot of people prefer the 50 weight because, like I said, a little bit lighter. The other difference, so again, top is 50, bottom is 40. You can almost kind of see that coming through there. The other big thing to keep in mind about 40 weight, and this is the thing to keep in mind, if you ever buy Aurifil, they all come on the same size spool. And just to understand the difference, on a 50 weight spool, you're getting 1,300 meters. On a 40 weight spool, they're going to be the identical size. The bottom is the identical size. You're only getting 1,000 meters. So that gives you an idea of the difference in size. It's not huge, but you're a math teacher. What's the difference between percentage-wise between 1,300 and 1,000? It's like 30%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're getting 30% more on a 50 weight spool than you are on a 40 weight spool, and the price is usually about the same. That's why price doesn't change a lot of times on Aurifil. The spool is the same whether it's 40 weight or 50 weight. You're just getting less thread. By weight, they're probably going to weigh the same. The spools are both going to weigh the same. They're both going to be the same diameter, but you're going to get less thread because it's a thicker thread. And that's why people like 50 weight, you get more per spool. And it's also finer. The finer the thread, the better your seam, the more accurate your seam allowance. 40 weight is your default size thread for embroidery. Almost every embroidery pattern is programmed to use 40 weight thread. So the density of the pattern is to use 40 weight, which is why if you come to our shop, we have real basic colors in the 50 weight. It's going to be white, color 2000, which is light sand, a gray, and a black. Just some basic neutrals, because most people are using 50 weight for piecing. You come to the shop, we have a ton of colors in the 40 weight, because 40 weight gets used for embroidery patterns. So we want to have a wider selection of colors because you need more than black and white to embroider things. You might find, and I don't know if that's true for all shops, but you're probably going to find more variety of colors in 40 weight versus a 50 weight or even the lighter 100 weights or 80 weights, because you only need generic kind of neutral colors at the height if you're piecing. Whereas once you start getting into decorative stuff, you're going to want different colors. This is Aurifil. I didn't open it up because I don't need to, but if you notice, the color of the spool is gray. This is Aurifil. Gray is 28 weight.
Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah. And as a general rule of thumb, I think was it 8 that you can get down to and still have, or 12. I think
12 will go in your machine.
12 is as heavy as you can get for thread to still have it go. As you get heavier, if you're trying to simulate handwork, just get a heavier thread. But the thing to keep in mind is 40 weight for decorative and embroidery, and 50 and above for your piecing. And I'm going to probably leave it there because you're all getting bored.
No, Jean likes your compass.
What's it 28 for?
28 is going to be, well, for example, when Becky was doing her frosty and you wanted the edges of that to look like it was done by hand, like hand applique, use a heavier thread, because a heavier thread is going to show up a lot more, so it will look like it was, if you do a blanket stitch with a heavier thread on your machine, it looks like you did it by hand.
Yeah.
But as the threads get heavier, once you get below 40 weight thread, it is a decorative thread. You want that thread to show up on what you're doing. So that's why you're going to see way more colors in heavier threads, because you really want to see, you're buying the thread because you want to see the thread. 50 weight and above, generally speaking, you don't want to see the thread.
See, and I cheaped out and just did 50 twice.
Yeah.
Because I already had it.
Yeah. And how did it come out? Did it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to run the stitch twice.
Yeah, and because you want a thicker looking stitch, so you run thinner thread twice, and that's a good technique as well. But keep in mind, like I said, below 40 weight is probably as low as I would go if you're piecing, and even there it's kind of iffy because it's 40 weight. But you can piece with 40 weight. But anything below that is decorative, and you're not going to want to piece with it. That's just kind of a general rule of thumb. You're going to, like I said, 50. 50 is as high as you can go, smallest you can go weight-wise and still be in cotton. Once you get above 50 weight cotton, 50 weight, you're probably not going to see it in cotton unless it's a real specialty thread. Yes, you do need a bigger needle for a 28 thread. I'm not going to get into needle size because I've bored you all enough with thread, but when you're sizing your needle, the two things you have to do account for is the project, how thick you're going through, and then also account for the thickness of your thread. So needle size, yes, you definitely need to change your needle, and this is why me and Becky have the disagreement about 9014 being the greatest needle ever made. Because 9014 is pretty forgiving. You can put just about any thread you want through it. But Becky makes a good case for doing the appropriate needle size. Yes, the Orfil Gray Spool is going to be the 28. I think they also have another one, I think a 12 weight that we don't carry. Because again, you're getting into real specialty stuff when you get that thick of a thread. That's all I had today for the Workbench. Like I said, we just kind of wanted to put all that thread info in one easy to see segment so that you can wow your friends with all your thread knowledge and stuff. And share, like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.